Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Hi, everybody. This is Lois Sonstegard with Building My Legacy. I am here today with Karen Whitaker. She is Vice President of Product Development for Grin & Bear. It is a young entrepreneurial company, and she comes out of a fascinating background in medical device as well. And so she has transitioned from one company to another. And so she's going to talk with us about what it was like to transition. And then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about why is that important for us? Because transitions either can head us in the right direction or they can shift us so we start going down a road that we really don't want to go down. And I've seen people go both ways. So, and it happens in retirement or when we're building legacy as well. So, Karen, I would like to have you introduce yourself first, and then I will ask you to share your story. But let's start with who you are, your background, and just take a minute or two to share that with the audience.
Sure. So overall, I'd say I have a diverse background in sales and multiple industries. So over 25 years of experience in sales. My last 10 years were spent in medical device. And currently I have found myself in a position to be with a startup in a completely different field in the dentistry or orthodontic field.
So here's what's interesting is it's not just an entrepreneurial startup company. It is a startup company that is backed with private equity. So it has many of the pressures of corporate in number setting that needs to be met. That's part of that private equity process. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to what you're doing today. You transitioned from another position, and just tell us a little bit about what happened and what you learned from that experience.
Sure. So at the young age of 36, after taking a couple of years to out of the market to raise my two boys, I wanted to get back into the workforce, and through relationships and connections found myself starting as a sales associate with a medical device company, which is really kind of an interesting, I don't think you're going to find a lot of people that automatically find themselves in a medical device sales role without having experience. And but again, it was through strong connections and relationships that I had built that gave me that opportunity. And so starting out as an entry level, being the oldest on a team of young sales reps, and going to training for 3 weeks, which was in and of itself a feat. I can't believe that I came out on the other end okay. And having to learn not just about the products and the procedures, but how to navigate the hospitals, the surgeons, and then my team as well because of my position. And quickly moved into a territory manager role, so from associate to a territory manager. And after about 3 years, I was ready for a change. I had not intended on going in and being the consummate rep for the rest of my life. I wanted to continue to move up the ladder and assume broader responsibilities. So it was at that point that I moved over to the clinical education team. And after a year, my manager left, and we went through the interview process, and basically I got the manager role. So now I find myself going from having to, I was a peer of the people that were on the team to now managing the team and then being tasked with growing that team. So that's what I spent the last 6.5 years at that company doing, was growing the team from 3 to 10, tripling the output from the team, improving the processes and procedures, just a huge time of just monstrous change in developing this team. And it got to a point where I found myself under a management that was difficult for me. And we were like oil and water. And I was very unhappy. I had always said that if things didn't work out that company, I would start my own business. But of course, I was too afraid to do that. You're always looking for that big payout. Once I make this much money, then I'll do this, right? So I was very unhappy, and received a call from a recruiter, which I had received calls and emails and LinkedIn requests for years and had ignored them. But for whatever reason, right time, right person said the right thing. I listened, and it led me to my next opportunity, which spending almost 10 years at my prior company, going to an early stage company, knew there was risk, but also there could have been a great reward, financial reward. And I didn't just jump for the money, I jumped for the people.
Okay, so I just want to pause there for a moment, because it's very interesting. Gallup has done research on the role of the manager and turnover in corporations. And what they found is that 85% of when people leave, it's because of the manager. And so your experience is not unique. It's the majority, actually, who go, wow, this isn't working. We can't mesh. And there doesn't seem to be a process to be able to bring people together, to be able to work that through, unless organizations are really clear about what it is that's happening. The impact of the manager isn't always clear. So go on. So from there, then what was the transition time that you had between your two positions?
1 week. So 1 week, I didn't take a breather. And I really only had that week because in medical device, a lot of times they won't let you play out your 2 weeks. So I was of the mindset, I need to work and I can't take a break. It's just, and you want the paycheck, right? So I made that leap very quickly. But going from a large corporation to an early stage company, and let me back up and say this too, it didn't last long. So I had jumped for I knew there was risk. I hoped that there was a huge financial payout, and within 8 months found myself being let go with a bunch of other sales or field team members. Completely unexpected. For the first time in my life, found myself without a job, without my control. I didn't leave. I've never been fired, and I have never been let go. So my first call to action was start looking for a job immediately. Mm-hmm.
So I want to just pause there for a moment, because that's huge. That's a huge life event when something like that happens. Mm-hmm. So your initial feeling was what when that happened?
I need to get another job.
You need to get another job. So you went right to action.
Absolutely. Okay. I was thinking, how can we built a lifestyle that requires 2 salaries. And it was a little bit of panic, to be honest with you. So I spent the first week and a half, I didn't leave the house. I hardly put on makeup. I just looked for a job and started connecting with people, and I was obsessive about it. And it wasn't until about a week and a half later when I realized I wasn't getting anywhere and I wasn't doing myself any favors. I wasn't feeling good, and I needed to reset. So I said to myself, you've been working like a dog for your entire life since you were 15 years old. What? Just breathe. Just take a breath. Think about what you want to do. Who do you want to be? Who do you not want to be? And so I stopped and I slowed down and I started focusing on those things. I spent some time with the family. I had been, I'm this close to being executive platinum for life on, at Marriott. I just found that out recently. That tells you how much time I spent on the road and away from my family, and it just time to reflect and breathe. And once I did that, not only did I feel better, my family was healthier, but I started to connect with some folks to start my own company, which I said I would do, right, if things didn't work out at my prior company. And that was started, invigorating me. I started getting excited. That was that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the master of my domain, of my future, and the architect of my life, right, in my career. And in doing that, made some connections that ultimately led to where I am right now. And this is a very early stage company, so very similar to the opportunity that I'm trying to create for myself in building my own company. So it's very and I'm finding that they can run parallel, especially in a early startup like this. So it really plays into my strengths, and I think part of what we want to talk about here is what not only changing your mindset when you make changes like this in your career, but what do you what qualities or what attributes that you take with you, and what do you learn from what your past taught you, and what do you let go of?
So part of what I'm hearing you say is that you got to this place within you're transitioning out of one and moving into the other new position. And you transitioned really rather quickly, because so some people it's 18 months before that transition occurs. For others, it's longer. And because there's a lot of things we begin to process. So I appreciate your sharing what you did. We process so much because the first thing we do is we take everything personally, right? And we start to evaluate, what was I doing? What didn't I do? What could I have done better? And some of that is so valuable. Marshall Goldsmith talks about how we really need to take that time to look at what we're going to leave behind. Because when you move forward, you can't carry everything with. You're taking on new skills, new things. And the old things, some have to be let go of. So what were the things that you learned? What did you learn that you wanted to let go of, you wanted to leave behind? And how did you go about changing that, what you needed to be for this new position?
So you talked about a short time there, a transition time. I'm very high energy. That's just me. I do move very quickly. And sorry about this. I don't know how to turn that off without keeping the sound on. But so I moved through those phases rather quickly. I don't know if that's normal or not.
It's commendable.
Well, and it's part of, I guess, my approach to life is the glass is always full, and I don't stay down very often, so I don't know if that plays into it or not. And I'm a fast-paced person, and when I get excited about something, like I take off very quickly. So yes, at first, what happened, I felt like something was wrong with me. What was wrong with me? Why was I not good enough? Did I not, was I not valuable enough? I mean, the company that I'd been with for almost 10 years, the company didn't fold. The department didn't fold. It's not as good as it was when I was there, but, but life goes on. Right. And so I think that what is that, mourning, I guess, and feeling sorry for myself a little bit maybe, but moved through that phase pretty quickly because I realized that in building some connections, which is I started to do, was reach out to people and through those conversations realize I have a lot of value and I have a lot of worth and I have a lot of skills, and one of those strengths being my relationship building skills, which played out very well for me throughout my entire career. And through those conversations, again, getting more energy and then thinking back on I guess the challenges that I had with my manager, or even rising above that position at the company that I was with for a long time. What was holding me back? Because I was the manager of clinical education. I was working towards becoming the director of clinical education and wasn't able to climb that next step on the ladder. So I started thinking about those things. Was it me? Was it them? Was it the company? Was it the culture? And ultimately, yes, there were some things with the culture. There were some things with the manager, but there were also things that some habits that I had created that were preventing me from taking that next step.
So one of the things you've talked about is one of the things you realized is you had to change your view and look at it was like unpacking a suitcase and deciding or having a new suitcase that you were taking to the new job. What were you unpacking from the last one and leaving behind, and what were you going to put in the new suitcase? So what did you decide to leave behind? Let's start there first.
Well, and I got this from the book that you mentioned, but
the book, by the way, is Sally Helgeson's book, How Women Rise. It's fabulous. So if you don't have it, get it. But go ahead.
Right. So one habit that really spoke to me was putting my job before my career, and I took my role as the manager and having that many direct reports so seriously, and I was so focused on making them successful and developing them and being accessible at all times. I mean, the education events ran all week and weekend. So, I mean, and I had the entire country. So early starts and on the Pacific Coast, late days. Right. So, I was so focused on those tactical day-to-day operations that I didn't, and my loyalty to my team, that I wasn't being loyal to myself and my aspirations, and that's probably one of the biggest things that led into why that I didn't get to that next level. So that's definitely something that I recognize and took out of the suitcase. Now, habits are not easy to break, and so I'm saying get out. And a lot of times those things can creep back in. You have to be very aware and self-reflect constantly to make sure that those habits don't creep back in your suitcase.
That's so true. Anything else that you decide to take out?
Yes. The disease to please, if you will.
The disease to please. Yes. Oh, wow. Yes.
I am not a very good delegator, or had not been, except at the home. My husband will attest to that. But the desire to just continue to help people, to be so helpful, and thinking that I don't want to burden anyone else and or let anyone else down, or I can do it better, so why don't I just do it? right? That doesn't help anyone. All it does is overburden your plate. So that's definitely something that, I'm making a conscious effort, because in a startup, you can overwhelm yourself completely, but I'm making a conscious effort to say, no, it's okay to take my time. And not to be everything to everyone. Another thing I think that I recognize is that I was reluctant to claim my achievements. So part of the reason I probably didn't toot my own horn enough, and that's not a very comfortable place for me to be honest with you. Say I did this or I did that, and I don't that language. But there's a way to do it without saying that, right? And there is a way to ask for those things to be recognized, right? So, I'm very new with this in this position, and again, I haven't seen that creep in, but it's something that I think once you become aware and you're enlightened by some of these bad habits, that you just have to continually make sure that they don't creep back up.
Part of it is we're socialized that way too. I think we're taught, be a team player. You don't need to toot your own horn, right? And so then when you're in a situation where you need to let people know what you're doing, it's hard. And we don't have the skill set. You're absolutely right. We don't have the skill set to know how to do that.
But men do. I've seen it repeatedly. And I think, and I don't want to say this as every man and every woman, but I would say that I see more of a pattern where women are more reluctant than men to do that.
Well, we have sort of that is a bias that we have. Nice girls don't do that, whereas we don't have any such belief system around boys, so they don't get impacted by that as much.
Right.
Anything else that you unpacked and decide to leave behind? Listen, these are wonderful lists, and wow, I think I can resonate with every one of them.
Yeah. The last one that I had was acting in my self-interest, and I think it's because just when you say self-interest, that to me sounds selfish. It's got self in it, right?
Oh, interesting. That is true. Yes.
But if we are not, then who is acting in our best interest? Right?
You can't take care of yourself otherwise. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So some of the things I did keep in my suitcase.
What did you keep? Yes.
Yes. This is the exciting stuff. So I would say, I mentioned this earlier, that I have a knack for building relationships very quickly. And in a startup situation, that's essential. But it really plays to my strengths. That's a good match there in a startup situation, because even with the company I'm with right now and the company I'm trying to build, especially with the company we're trying to build, we have the idea, we have the knowledge for the idea, but I mean, find yourself in a completely different world of understanding financials. How do you get an idea off the ground? How do you build the capital? How do you this happens to be software, so how do you connect with the right programmers? How do you find your angel investors? How do you build a pro forma, things that are completely you've never done before, right? So you need people that can do those things or who have experience doing those things. So definitely relationship building, creativity, and that too plays in really well to a startup scenario. It played out very well for me in my prior 2 roles, wearing many different hats and being able to create new processes and seeing gaps, I guess, in and then being able to come up with solutions and fill them. So, but that happens in a startup every minute. Because there are so many gaps when you're starting a company. So, and then I mentioned this earlier, my drive and my energy. I mean, we had a call just this morning with my partners that are trying to start a company, and they were asking for something. I told them, I already sent that to you. And they were like, wow, okay. I'm like, I don't let the grass grow under my feet. I move very quickly. So that too will play out very well, especially in a startup situation. And then resilience. I mean, because in a startup company, you will fail a lot. And I've learned that in sales. I mean, if you cannot be a good salesperson if you can't handle no or rejection or failure, because you will crawl up in a ball and stay in bed and not get out in front of your customers because it's hard. So I call it resilience, grit, what have you. That is necessary in a startup scenario. So definitely a skill that I'm keeping in the suitcase.
What are you going to go shopping for to add to your suitcase?
Ooh. Well, if I'm going to have a title and be in the C-suite, then I need to really, I need to fit the part in essence, in some ways. I mean, I think that things are changing a lot. You see a lot of these startup companies that have younger and younger CEOs, COOs, right, CMOs. That's just our day and age, right? That was not the case in our parents' generation, right? Very rarely would you see somebody who is young in that role. It's changed a lot. In fact, I'm finding myself, I could look at it and say I'm maybe too old in the space that we're entering, right? The digital tech world.
Yeah. In the digital world, yes. Millennials certainly have an advantage. And yet, I think we're going to be becoming more and more, there's a hype that's gone with that and a lack of responsibility. And I think we're going to start seeing some shifts again because people are getting tired of the stories that don't make any sense or aren't realistic or aren't achievable. And we see that a lot in terms of what's happening right now in the social media world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I'm doing a lot of research and listening to a lot of podcasts just to educate myself in what I'm trying to accomplish here. And there is space for both the millennial, or if I don't know what they call them now. I'm a boomer apparently, but we need each other, and probably the more successful companies are utilizing or diversifying themselves with people of my generation and older versus that have the experience. We have something to bring to the table with the younger generation who also brings a lot to the table, and they can complement each other really well. So, and it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people too, right? And to be honest with you, I know that I will not be the smartest and the most knowledgeable, and that's fine. I'm just going to surround myself with the people that are.
For our audience, I just want you to know we're going to be doing a series, 5-part series on this. And so we're going to come back and talk more about this with Karen, because she has so much that she's willing to share with us from her experience, and that willingness to share. And so all of us can learn is such a gift you've given to us. So I want to just close today, because we have been talking, it's hard to believe, for 30 minutes already. Time has just flown by. So one of the things that I want us to really reflect on is that what we want to be and where we're wanting to go, we have to be really proactive with that. And that's really what your story is all about, because what you've looked at is, what am I leaving behind? So I've got the energy to move forward. And I think when we don't do that, what happens is our stress level only gets higher because we're overburdened by carrying so much forward. And I think often of that movie, The Mission, that was done many years ago. But it's a priest. It takes place in Brazil. And this priest has been going into the mountains and taking indigenous people and selling them as slaves to Portugal. And he has this conversion experience and realizes how horrible it is, and goes into the monastery, refuses to come out, doesn't want to eat. And so one of the priests says, why don't you come with me? And we're going to go back to those villages. And he said, why would they ever want to see me? So when he goes, he puts this chain, this rope and chain with all sorts of heavy stuff on it. And as they're climbing up these rocks, he's pulling that with him. And his effort is like 10 times what the other guy's is. And when he finally gets to the top, the chief of this one tribe that he had been particularly difficult with said to the priest, the other priest, why is he here? And he explained the story. And he goes and gets a knife and cuts the chain and frees him from this burden he'd been carrying. So that's what we do. We carry all this stuff, and it's heavy, and it weighs us down, and then we can't move forward. So we're going to talk so much more about this. 5 weeks of talking about how do you really develop strategies so that you can navigate the corporation world successfully, the corporate world. So, Karen, thank you so much. Your wisdom, your experience is such a gift. Thank you for being with us, and I look forward to our next session.
I'm excited. Thank you so much, Lois.
Thank you.
It's fun.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.